Hi, this is Terry Duncan with Cut, Color, and Create. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to do a unique blending technique that's new to me. We're going to use dye inks and distress inks to do some watercolor blending. We're going to start off utilizing Canson Bristol watercolor paper. We're going to use A2 size for a card base. And we're going to begin with stamping using watermark ink. And we're going to use this stamp set, Altenews Garden Treasure. I've picked a couple of different images that we're going to use. We're going to begin by using some anti-static. Make sure that covers the whole card base. Now, what I like to do is ink the whole thing on, but if you cannot see the image, then you can ink on one image, heat emboss it, and then put more anti-static on, and repeat the process. But I can see the images, so I'm just going to keep on stamping. And I'm gonna switch to this other image. And I'm gonna add a few of those on. I like to create kind of a border around the edge of the card. Now I'm gonna kind of wrap up on the top of this edge. And that takes care of my stamping. So next I'm going to add some white embossing powder. I'm going to heat up my gun a little bit. And then I'm going to start with heating the back of the card. And then watch for the ink to change and begin to shine. You want to make sure that all of the powder is melted before you stop. And hopefully you can see that the color of that is changing as it's melting. There we go. So now, hopefully, let's see, can you see that? It's probably kind of hard to see the image, but that's all embossed. Oops, I missed a spot, so I'm going to heat that up a little bit more. There we go. So our next step then is to use some of our favorite dyes. So I have Altenews here, and I've got some Warm Sunshine. I've got Lavender Fields. I've got Ocean Waves, and I've got Forest Glades. And what I'm going to do is begin to blend over those images that I just stamped on. So I'm going to get a good amount on my brush, and then I'm just going to start to blend over the image and go both directions. And what I like to do is go a little bit farther than the edges of the image. And you do that so that you can blend the colors together after you start to change them from one flower to the other. So I like to have yellow on the outer edges of my design, at least for this one. And I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to go to the frayed leaf. And I think I'll put that on this image here. And you see it pops out that image of the flower, and like I said, I like to blend those two colors together. See how nice it makes a transition there? And I think I'm going to go with the ocean waves next. And I'm going to color this flower with it. Making sure to blend between the two colors. See, it kind of gives a nice halo effect. And lastly, we'll go with the lavender. Lavender Fields is the title of it. There, isn't that beautiful? So that's the first major step of building up our card. So the next step, I'm going to put these dies away. The next step is to pull out our distress inks. And I see I got a little embossing powder on my mat, so I'm going to wipe that away before I start this process. And I'm going to bring out my distress inks, and I have spiced marmalade, squeezed lemonade, twisted citrus, cracked pistachio, peacock feathers, and wilted violet. And what I'm going to do is just smush each one of those colors onto my mat. And then I'm going to take a big, what I think is a big watercolor brush. This one is a number 8 made by Royal Watercolor. And you can see the tip is relatively large. I've got a little jar of clean water. And I always have a paper towel handy to clean out my brush in between colors and to keep my brush wet. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with some of this spiced marmalade. And I'm just going to pick it up off of the mat, and I'm going to start to color in the center of this yellow flower. And I might just let it bleed out a little bit around onto the petals. And then from there, I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to move some of that color into the petals. See how nice that does? The more water you tend to have, the more abstract it makes it. I want to move that a little bit more than what it was. There we go. So I'm going to do the same thing with this other yellow flower. Start with a center, and then I'm going to put some globs out here towards the ends of the petals. Put a little water on it and move that color. See how nice that blends together? It makes a nice soft look. So that's the first two flowers. Then I dip my brush in the clean water and wipe it off on, well, you can't see my paper towel, but I'm wiping it off on a paper towel. And then I think I'm going to go with the green. And I like teal with green, so I'm going to pick up some of this teal and I'm going to begin to paint it onto the edges, kind of trying to make it darker towards where the petals meet. It helps if you have a pointed, like a round brush like I have. And now I'm going to pick up my water, dab it on my paper towel, and then start to move the color. See how nice that picks up. And you can see that the technique really takes on that watercolor look when you add this water to the distress. Look how pretty that is. So next, I'm going to clean off my brush again. And my next step is going to be to pick up a little bit of this wilted violet, and I'm going to try to add it into this pretty teal flower. And just spreading out some of the color. See, I missed one. And now I'm going to move this color. Blending it into the ink. And then I like a little yellow with my violet, so I'm going to pick up this squeezed lemonade and start in the center and just let it bleed out into some of the petals. And then I'm going to use my water to move it. And there you are. Isn't that pretty? Now, what I normally do with this kind of panel is I just die cut it with a stitched rectangle die. That makes a nice little finished edge, and mount it on white cardstock. Now what I've got a little sentiment to add. And this is the stamp set that I have. It's made by Simon Says Stamp, Handwritten Love. And I just chose this nice little I Love Us. And I'm going to use some Altenew Obsidian. Normally I would wait for this to dry, and I like to use a Misty to make sure I get it straight. I'm just going to add that right in here. And isn't that pretty? Beautiful. I have an example here of one that I've got all mounted on the card base to show you. I used a different stamp set for this. This is also Altenew, but it's Wild Hibiscus. And I set that on foam card, craft foam. And then you can see the stitching around the edge. So that's it. Blending with inks and water. Thank you for joining me. Bye.